Oh, and another thing. And yeah, this was going to be my tangent video because I started talking about it the other day. And I'm going to write it down because it seems to poof out of my head. I got my computer on right here. Should type this for notepad. Here's me again being old school. Notepad, moral virtue versus moral foundation edict. Or yeah, moral foundation or edict. Okay, so I talked about this the other day when it comes to J.K. Rowling and stuff like that. Rowling, whatever. Don't care about her. I really don't. Love her work. And I alluded to this with what happened in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which again, Star Trek: The Motion Picture is one of my favorite Star Trek movies. Again, I love all Star Trek movies except for Nemesis. But and so on that scale, by the way, for me, Nemesis is worse than the motion picture. If you want to put it, if I was making a chart of who's going to be the best, Star Trek 6 is the best Star Trek movie, period. And people, oh, it's Star Trek 2. No, Star Trek 2 is a good sequel to Space Seed. It's a standalone action adventure. And again, people who get so mad at JJ's universe because it's just action, it's not Star Trek. Did you guys watch Wrath of Khan? Did you guys watch the Wrath of Khan? It is Star Trek, but it's an episode of Star Trek that has nothing to do with the bigger universe of Star Trek, except for Spock dying. But even that is all personal. There's no Star Trek-ness to the Wrath of Khan. There's no social reasons that they're trying to make an allegory to get stuff going on in the world and whatever. Star Trek 6 is 100% allegorical. Star Trek 6 is more allegorical than Star Trek 4, and Star Trek 4 was stupid on the nose with its allegory of how we're killing ourselves. Again, not to talk about the environment and stuff. Star Trek 4 is in your face. We shouldn't be doing this to our environment and our animals and whatever else. Star Trek 4 was 100% allegory, or not even allegory. It was like a blatant talk about save the whales, save the environment. But Star Trek 6 was 100% Star Trek allegory, because it was, and I don't know this. I know that there is a not a rumor. I don't think it's an old wives' tale. I think it's actually true that Gene Roddenberry got to see a rough cutting of Star Trek 6 before he passed away in 1991. That he got to see it. I can't remember what year Star Trek 6 came out, but I think Star Trek 6 came out during the Next Generation, so maybe. But he got a rough cut of it, and he says, "Oh, at least it's not Star Trek 5." Again, I'm not going to fault Star Trek 5. It has a place. But anyway, Star Trek 6 is a Star Trek allegory, not just an allegory, a general allegory towards naturalism and environmentalism. Star Trek 6 was 100% allegory of Star Trek, whereas it was 100%. The series, the original Star Trek series, was basically the wagon train to the stars. But Star Trek, this series, the original TOS series, and it carried on, is to take the problems and issues and whatever else is that the 20th century person was facing on the planet in the 60s, and take that issue into the future and have a solution, or try to come up with a solution, or talk about it. There's an episode called "The Private Little War" in the first TOS. I think it was in the first season. A Private Little War was. They've referenced the Vietnam War without actually saying the word Vietnam. They said it was a brush war in the late 20th century. The Private Little War, the Klingons were supplying arms to one side of the factions of the planet, and so therefore the Federation had to supply arms to the other Federation, the other side of the planet, the two warring parties. It was a direct allegory to the Vietnam War. That's what it was. It was to make the point. Yes, let this be your last battlefield. It was the point of racism. There was so many, I can't even, whatever. There are so many ideas. Oh, for crying out, I forget the episode name. Not the Omega Glory. I thought that was, again, some people didn't like that one. It was, they're literal Nazis. and it's where we get, this is, my mind is just bad. The historian, John Gill, thank you. John Gill, historian from in universe of Star Trek. John Gill was a historian of old Earth, and he went on this planet of people who were not evolved into space yet. They're war factioning, like they're, we would say, comparable to the 18th century feudal states, whatever. And he goes on there to try to get them to become better people. And he thought that he could take the good parts of the Third Reich, the good parts, because there was cohesiveness to that, and bring them into a better world. And of course, power corrupts. So, I mean, it was a blatant allegory to that. Like you watched a lot of Star Trek episodes, the original series, that weren't, whatever. It was 100% allegory. And that's all Star Trek 6 was. And it was, I mean, right off Chernobyl. I mean, it was right off, the first scene of Star Trek 6 was Chernobyl. The Klingons blew up their power plant. They blew it up. That's what Russians did. It was that. I love Star Trek 6. There were two main concerns that takes me right out of that movie, what they did to Uhura with the language thing. But other than that, it was a perfect Star Trek movie. Other than that, that movie was perfect Star Trek. The characters were all getting along in screen, not outside of screen, but in screen, in the story, and they could have fixed the other things. But anyway, all this to be said. I didn't expect to go off on that tangent. We talked about this, is that, so JK, put that aside. Star Trek the Motion Picture is one of my favorite movies, just for the visual space porn is what we call it. Ship porn. They made fun of it in Lower Decks, which I enjoyed. But that scene going over the Enterprise, some people fall asleep. I am rapt attention to the details. Like I sometimes I like the details, and I'll sit 8 minutes and watch that happen. Some people, it's a snooze fest. I enjoyed it, but also for me, again, Robert Wise, whatever, blah blah blah. The idea of you seeing that ship in space dock and spending so much time around it to get the magnitude of the USS Enterprise. I mean, it's 24 decks, but you think about 24 decks. I mean, you go into Skyrise and it's more than 24 decks, more than 24 floors, but you get the magnitude of that whole flyby about how big the starship is. It's not like the Battlestar Galactica where they say it's 5 miles long, or Babylon 5 where they say that the space station is 5 miles long. But you don't get the enormity of how big Babylon 5 is, even though you'd think of it's 5 miles long, because that's what they said. Or as they said, the Galactica, how big that ship is. Because they don't seem to give you a sense of scale of how big that ship is. They don't dwell on it. It's just big. Whereas the Enterprise flyby at Motion Picture, which you never got in the series either, at the beginning, was to establish the scale of the Enterprise and how vastly big it is. And then you get to V'ger. And the Enterprise is this little tiny dot going across. When that one shot from above, and you see this little tiny Enterprise going over top of this monstrosity of a huge spaceship. Like, you would not get the scale of V'ger unless you had that scene at the beginning of Star Trek The Motion Picture. You wouldn't. You wouldn't get the enormity of how big V'ger was. And it was like this, bigger than a planet. Like it was massively huge. I'm not sure it was bigger than a planet, but I remember reading the book. I think they said the cloud around V'ger was 8 AU. And if you know what astronomical unit is, the distance between the Earth and the Sun, I think if I remember correctly, it's been a while, so it's been decades since I read the book, but I think they said in the book that the cloud around V'ger was 8 AU long. So you think about that, how enormously huge that thing was. There was nothing inside Star Trek again that was that big. Maybe something more powerful like Q, but there was nothing as big as V'ger ever in the rest of the entire series. Even the Dyson Sphere in Relics was not that big. The Dyson Sphere was 1 AU, well 2, because it's on the other side of the sun too, and it was a whole sphere. But 2AU is not as big as 8AU. so anyway, so I love the Star Trek motion picture, but I knew back then, not when they made the movie, but I knew a couple years back, it's been a while back, that the actor who played one of the main characters, not our favorite people from the series, but one of the main characters, one of the other actors that came in for that movie, did stuff to kids. And it's like, should that action of